Okay, so I'm going to be talking to you now about malware. So remember that I said in spoofing, what happens is that the adversary tries to persuade the victim to click on some link, and hopefully if the victim does that, then this will install some software or some application on the victim's device, and then that application can be used or controlled by the adversary. So we look at malware, how it is spread, and what you can do to try to protect yourself against malware attacks. So malware is basically a generic term to define what code is, bad code, that gets executed on your system, typically without your explicit knowledge and consent. And usually this code is going to be doing bad things on your system. So for example, it's going to try to steal sensitive information. So think about key logging malware, for example. Data deletions, for example, or file corruption. So if it deletes important files on your system, this is something that is going to be really unpleasant. But that is the extreme case. What typically happens with malware is that it's used to spread scam. And it's used to spread scam because what the adversary is trying to get at, in essence, is the personal information that you typically have available on social media platforms. A classic example of malware is the My Webcam Thingy malware. So it sounds like a very strange name for a malware, but what it was about was that it worked with Twitter accounts, and what happened was that Twitter followers or tweeters were sent some link, and they were told to go and check out a webcam that led to them going to some portal which requested information from them, and this information was used to steal their passwords and credit card details. So what I'm pointing at is that this came from the fact that you have Twitter, which is a social media account. By tweeting and following this webcam, it leads the users to some portal that leads to their passwords and credit card details being stolen. And if your password is stolen, for example, then it allows the adversary to be able to access your social media platform, for example. If your credit card details are stolen, then they can buy lots of stuff for themselves online without your permission and leave you with the bills. So basically, the idea of malware is that it allows the adversary to embed malicious code in messages that look authentic and trustworthy, and that users are going to follow on or react to in a normal and natural way, and that will allow the attacker or the adversary to draw information from the users that they would not otherwise divulge. So for example, you would not voluntarily give somebody whom you don't know, or somebody whom you care, even somebody whom you really care about, your passwords, and even worse, your credit card details, to allow them to do things on your behalf with your credit card that you don't want them to be doing. Malware, apart from this example that I just talked about, which is some variant of a scam, operate, as I said before, on the basis of luring the victim, of persuading the victim to want to do certain things. So we've talked about, for example, identity theft, we've talked about spoofing, and what I would like you to try to bear in mind is that all of these topics that we've talked about build on each other and are cohesive and interact, information that interact with each other, and that are self-beneficial. So with scams, for example, scams can be used to spread malware. And in this case, what happens is that the victim is lured, for example, to a website. And we just saw what happened with, for example, my webcam thingy, where the victim is lured not because they are silly or they are not aware of what is going on, but because the message that persuades them to go to this website looks quite ordinary or trustworthy. Okay, and the malware is able to do this or able to work this way because it is based on, for example, search engine optimization techniques. So the same techniques that allow Google to now provide better search results to your queries are the same techniques that adversaries use to optimize, for example, searches through personal information in order to coin messages that are better suited or better adapted and more sophisticated, and that will persuade the user to think that this message is authentic and react to it in a natural way. Scam attacks or scams, malware that operate in the form of scams also include things like clickjacking or cross-site scripting attacks, which we delve into in the next couple of lectures. We've talked also about identity theft, bogus surveys, for example, where you will provide information about opinions that you have on a topic. And remember, as I said before, information that you provide can be searched, can be analyzed in order to deduce personal information about yourself. There are other ways that malware is spread. So, for example, through third-party updates. So, third-party updates or third parties like Twitter or TweetDeck that encourage users to provide status updates. So, for example, status updates that tell the adversary where it is you're located at. So, for example, if you click on a like of a photograph, for example, at 3 a.m. at night, it tells the adversary that you were up at 3 a.m. at night, for example. If you are not usually ordinarily up at 3 a.m. at night, then it might mean that you have moved from the location that you are at usually, and you are at some other time zone. So it tells the attacker that you're probably not in your household, and this information can be used to provoke any number of other attacks, for example, to deduce that you're not at home currently and allow the attacker, for example, to burgle your household. Okay. There are also chain reactions. So basically, I'm talking about all of this to give you some global idea, some global scope of how malware is propagated, and to explain to you that this doesn't happen because the users are unaware, but because the attacks also get more and more sophisticated, and also because the attacks have grown more and more sophisticated. You need to be aware of the types of techniques that adversaries are going to be using, and what you need to do to protect yourself against these attacks. So chain reactions also build on what we talked about, for example, in spoofing, of what we talked about, for example, in identity theft, of offering the user something. So, for example, a gift, to say, for example, if you participate in this survey, you're going to win, for example, the latest model of an iPhone, or you're going to win, for example, the latest tablet, and so on. All gifts or attractants that are going to persuade a user to want to participate in the survey. However, as I said before, participating in the survey requires you to provide information that might not be explicit personal information, but that allows the adversary to build a pattern or to build some profile of who you are, what it is you like, things that you would not ordinarily say upfront. So, for example, your favorite meal or your favorite bank account, and so on and so forth. or they can happen in the sense that they require you to spread some text. So remember the message, the example that I gave you a couple of lectures back when I talked about the fact that you can have some message that gives you some psychological reward, and this requires you to spread this message, which builds again a network of who your friends are. And the network of who your friends are is important to the person wanting to spread the malware, because they then have some perception or some idea of the number of people who are likely to get affected by this malware, and therefore the benefits of what adversarial situation that they are going to be provoking is going to be increased. Okay. Other things, for example, you get this photograph from your friend and it says something exciting. We've talked about photographs, for example, okay? And what we typically do is to absent-mindedly click the like button. Oh, we like this photograph, okay, for example. Well, the liking a photograph is great, but malware also takes advantage of the fact that we tend to click like buttons without really consciously thinking about what we do. And so if you click, for example, on a like button, what might happen is that some website pops up which is requiring you to do something, and if you are offering you, for example, a gift in exchange for some information that you provide. And usually it looks quite authentic, so it would tell you something like, we need your name and we need your address in order to send you your gift. By liking this photograph, you have won a gift. And the thing is, what we typically think is, this is too good to let go by. And after all, it's just my name and my address. It doesn't matter. Well, hello, giving them your address, giving them your name tells them quite a bit about you that you probably don't want to be shared. Okay. Website buttons, for example, by clicking, for example, on a like button, triggers a whole lot of code executions in the background that can lead to the installation of malware on your system. And malware on installations on your system, on your social media platform, can lead to situations such as you're being portrayed, for example, as a cyberbully. So sending messages to your friends that give the impression that you are trying to bully them, or spreading messages to your friends that are inappropriate and that that your friends don't expect to be coming from you. Okay, so the challenge that you have is to decide what, for example, photographs that you like, what bits of information that you want to click on, and so on. And it's made more difficult because, for example, Twitter uses shortened URLs in general, just because of the whole way that Twitter is built and the whole conception of social media communication on Twitter. And typically what malicious software also does, or malware also does, is to shorten URLs. So what you can do to help yourself is basically to stop and think. Be skeptical of messages that you receive. Look at what it is that you receive before you click or to like it, or before, for example, you decide to spread it to other of your friends. Okay. Take a close look at, for example, your friends list, who it is you receive, for example, some message from. Are they really your friend? Think about, for example, what we talked about when we talked about spoofing attacks. Protect your PC or your device. Get a good antivirus program, for example. Keep your system patched and updated. Remember what we said about logging into your system and making sure that you log out when you're not working on the system. Next time I want to talk to you about anonymizing social network graphs. I think this is particularly interesting with respect to everything else that we've discussed and the fact that this falls nicely in the topic of talking about privacy and security on social media. I'd like you to try to recap and think about the butterfly botnet attack, which is a variant of a malware attack that occurred on Facebook in 2015. To think about that for the next lecture, and think about how this was propagated by the Yahoo's virus that is based on social engineering, which is the whole concept of social media.